All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Hart Hustle Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about the heart and the hustle of everything that has to do with business, but also life. Today, I'm incredibly excited to be able to bring you our guest today. Our guest has a tremendous background. She is the founder and CEO of Dynamic Intentions. She is an elite success and mindset coach. She spent 10 plus years as the director and managing partner of an international financial organization. But in 2020, Sally actually left her corporate career and became a professional, I'm going to re-say that. So in 2020, Sally actually left her corporate career to partner with professionals, businesses, entrepreneurs, and individuals as a high-performance leadership coach and mentor in personal and professional development. Sally, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm excited to be here, Keenan. Thanks for having me.
So, Sally, one of the biggest things that I've recognized in my professional career is how important our mindset is. Now, one of the things that I also recognize about your extensive background was you spent so many years in leadership roles in different organizations, in finance, in different places. But my question for you is, when you left your corporate career in 2020, why did you start focusing on mindset specifically? And what was kind of the aha moment, maybe an experience in your career that kind of addressed or at least kind of shine the light on why mindset was so important?
Absolutely. So there's a couple questions in there. So I guess the reason why I chose to go into this field was because after having worked in corporate for many years in leadership and coaching people my whole career in all different levels, what I discovered was there was something missing. There was something missing in the corporate training programs, the corporate development. And one day I heard that there was over $60 billion a year spent in corporations for training people how to do their jobs. What they don't train you in corporate is why you're getting the results you're getting. And so I wanted to discover what was the secret key to those people that seem to seemingly easily have top results, a lot of people in the middle, and then people that would come into a career and they would fail out of it. And it all had to come down to mindset because they were all trained the same way. They were all given the same opportunity, but there was something missing in that corporate world. And so I went on a journey to find out what that was because it really was, I was getting really curious about the difference between those three different levels. And I would see people failing out and it would, really affect me because I wanted everybody to be successful. Yet I knew there was something deeper down inside that was causing them to not be able to have the success. Because no matter how much we train them on how to do the job, the systems, the processes, that kind of thing, one person could come and sit side by side with another one and the results would be completely different. So I knew that there was a missing link. And that's one of the reasons why I got into this field, is because I just wanted to get deeper and deeper into understanding that difference, so that everybody would have the opportunity to really tap into their greatness and be whatever they wanted to be, do whatever they wanted to do, and have whatever they wanted to have. And so for me, my passion switched from just leading teams and working with people in the corporate world to actually wanting to really help everybody to be able to determine what was that next phase for them to get to the results that they truly desired, and in an easier, more efficient manner.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me because I think one of the biggest dynamic differences in people and how they approach their job is really the mindset that comes along with that. And I think it's very interesting. I mean, you talked about some amazing statistics. $60 billion a year is spent in training people. But how do we train the mindset of these individuals to perform at their highest level? I know because I'm specifically in the mental health space, I recognize that our jobs and lives in general come with so much stress and so many feelings of overwhelm, and how we approach the day from a mindset perspective and the tasks that we're executing on in business are so fundamental to us to be able to kind of show up as our best self, but also perform in the role that we have in our organization as well.
Yeah, and I think, when you're speaking in that regard, there are so many outside stresses that we bring into the workplace. And, my largest team was over 1,600 people in one facility. And so within that, it was very evident what people were coming in to work with and going into their day-to-day jobs, because we had also shift work went all day and all night, and so there was different people coming in at different times of the day. Some loved the night shift, some couldn't handle that, but at the same time they all came in with different things that were happening in their life every day. you could be sitting beside somebody one day and they're great, and the next day they're just not wanting to do anything. Their attitude was bad. They just were in a bad spot or a bad place in their life. Something may have triggered it. Something might have just woken up that day, and something in a thought came to them, and it just set them off. Or maybe they were driving to work and somebody cut them off, and so then that started that anger. And so when you're thinking about working with people, because every business is people, we really need to, as leadership, start to understand that the drive to be able to get people to have success is to understand the background behind our thoughts. And that mindset is really critical, because some people have been able to manage their mindset to be able to say, I'm in work, I'm focused, I'm going to drive these results, I'm going to be 100% here, and I'm going to get the job done, and I'm going to do it this way, and this way works for me. But that way doesn't work for everybody. And a lot of people don't walk into work in the morning saying, I can't wait to be here. I can't wait to get my day started. There are some people that are like that. And oftentimes in the days, like, I liked going to work. I enjoyed work. It was always challenging, and I liked it. But, my spouse, on the other hand, gets up in the morning and his thought pattern is not to go. He doesn't like going to work. Mm-hmm. Even though I know he goes to work and he has fun, he starts off with that mindset where it's not going to be. Like, I'm not looking forward to going to my work today. And oftentimes in the morning, he's leaving the house in that feeling state. And so when we're leaving in that feeling state, we're taking that feeling with us. And then that feeling goes on to not only what we're going to do and produce in that day, but it's also going to affect the people around us. Because energy is so powerful. And so when you're walking into that workplace and you're feeling negative, or you're feeling like the day's not going to go your way, it probably won't.
Yeah, I completely agree. So one of the things I want to kind of break down for the audience as well, there's a lot of conversation out there about mindset in general, but for so many people that kind of sounds like a big foo-foo idea, if you will. So why don't you spend a couple seconds kind of breaking down what are the elements of mindset and what does that really mean, so people can really kind of, I guess, put themselves in the shoes of somebody who you would be coaching, and how they can start kind of self-analyzing what their mindset is.
Yeah, so there's some really major elements, I think. I want to take you back to childhood when we were in school. So we were a little boy or a little girl, and we're sitting in grade 1 or kindergarten, maybe in grade 2 or 3, and you're sitting there, Keenan, and you're looking out the window and you're daydreaming, and I'm there, the good little girl, doing my math and paying attention to the teacher, and then the teacher says, Keenan, stop daydreaming, focus on
this
your
sounds
math.
so accurate.
Right? It happens to so many kids, but honestly, that daydream is a vision. That's a vision for something that they're creating in their mind. They're seeing something out there that allows their creativity to take place. When we shut that down as children, it stops us from naturally attracting that energy of those visions that are going to get us to have that creativity to create what we choose in our life. And so we learn at an early age, if you don't get an A, then you're not smart. Not true at all. We learn at an early age, don't daydream, focus. We learn at an early age, mom or dad told us money grows on trees. We start to believe that because mom and dad never have money, and we don't have a money tree, so what are we going to do? So we start to learn these behaviors when we're young. And when we learn these behaviors, which are really just an emotion that's attached to something that we've been told or that we've internalized. And as children, we don't have the ability between the ages of, like, when we're born to the age of about 12, maybe 7 or 8 is where it sort of starts to change a little bit, but I'd say till about 12, where we don't have a logical mind to be able to accept anything other than the truth what we're being told. So if that truth says, Keenan, you're not smart enough because you got a C and your sister got an A, you're going to start to think she's the smart one and you're not. Right? And so it starts at that early age. So it's really important for us as parents to understand what we are, could be parents, grandparents, friends, everything else, putting these beliefs into us that stop us from doing that. And then when we get to our teen years, that's when we start thinking the kids are getting, a little out of control, because that's when their logical mind starts setting in. They're like, well, I'm smart. Just because I got a B back in grade 1 doesn't mean I'm not smart. I'm really good at math. I love math. It comes so easily to me. And so they start to question with their logic from age 12 onwards. But what happens is as we age, we could have an instance where you go to a corporation and you're offered this job, and then Billy gets the promotion and Keenan doesn't. And you think automatically you go back to the same emotions you had when your sister got a higher grade than you did. And that's a paradigm that we have, and we create, because it's a reaction to a behavior that we have, that creates the emotion, and then we act on that emotion. And so for me, one of the biggest elements, there's two big elements, I'll talk about this one first, is the paradigms that we have, which are those habitual behaviors with an emotional attachment to them that we just automatically have programmed in us. However, we can reprogram them. And that's one of the things I get to do. So I love that piece of it.
That's incredibly powerful. I want to, before we go into our second point here, I kind of want to talk about that belief system. So one of the things that I know is when we are younger, many of our beliefs are almost forced upon us because we're told what to think, what to believe, especially in the education system. I always joke around with my mom about me being young in school, and I was that daydreamer. I was that guy who was looking out the window, and I was always being told, hey, you have to focus. Right. And I just didn't understand why, because the things that we were learning didn't seem so applicable to the bigger vision that I had for life. And that was always a super big contrast. And when I didn't perform well in school, my parents always tried to, get me back into shape by saying, hey, you need to try harder. But I was just never passionate about those things. And now that I'm older, I recognize that my worldview, especially in those early years, was formed on somebody's opinion of how things were, my teacher or the people who I interacted with. And as I got a little bit older, I started to challenge that paradigm and started to think about how there has to be a better way to do these things. And I know so many people who are also kind of watching or listening to this episode can also relate with that experience as well. So I think that is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my son, I think he was in grade 6 or 7, and he could do all of the math in his head. Brilliant from a math perspective. And so I remember him getting a test back one time, and he got all the answers correct, but he didn't show his work. So the teacher docked him marks because he didn't show the work. He didn't need to show the work. He did it all in his head, and he did it so fast that his test was done before anybody else's.
Wow.
But she questioned it as if in grade 6 or 7 he was cheating there, but he wasn't. He was just brilliant in math. And so at the same time, what does that do to him? To say, because you were able to process it without having to write it down like everybody else was taught to, means that you're lesser than? Because that's the message that would have been sent. Right? And so when you hear these things, you think, wow, what are we doing at a younger age to our children to stop them from having that belief in themselves? From stopping them to have those daydreams? Because, I mean, you remember when you were little and in grade school and you went out on recess, what did everybody do? They're having joy, they're having fun, they're having laughter, they're trying new things, they're swinging from the ropes, they're doing whatever's out there, and they're just having so much fun and joy. And then we bring them in. Here, this is what you need to do. Now, I'm not saying the school system's completely broken. I say that there's certain things in there that we've done in our school system and in our homes that has prevented us from really understanding the impact we have to our children at a young age. And we've all been through it. I mean, I was raised back in the day and know what that's like, right? But at the same time, what could we do differently as not only we're raising children, but to identify it as adults? What has happened to us that was just a behavior that was taught from the generation to the generation to the generation? And one of those things that's easy to relate to is eating food. If you were raised in an Italian family, you will probably be cooking Italian meals as an adult. And those will be your favorites because they're your comfort foods and that's what you're familiar with, right? If you were raised with Thai food, if you're in a Thai family, then you would have been doing the same thing. So if you think about those intergenerational habits, food's one of them that we continually have because we became accustomed to it. It became our comfort. And we know that that's the food that everybody will enjoy when they come to visit. So we normally attach to those. So that can also be a paradigm where some people are still cooking the same dishes that their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents cooked as they age. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but why do we not have different choices that we decide to explore as we age?
I mean, that's incredibly interesting because, I heard a statistic recently that talks about 40% of our day is habituation, right? Habitual actions that we don't even think about, but we often act in an autopilot mode. And I
Right.
think so many of our decisions that we make and so many of the things that we do on a daily basis are kind of based on some of those emotions and those early experiences that we've had as well.
Yeah.
And so as I get a little bit older, I start to think about some of the ingrained behaviors and the way I react to situations, and
Yeah.
especially those emotions that start to churn up, that were kind of hardwired into me very early, that I also recognize don't serve me anymore just because of where I'm at in life, but also the current situations that I find myself in. I recognize that maybe some of my behaviors need to be challenged, or at least my beliefs have to be challenged if I'm going to be as successful as I want to navigate these situations with different results.
Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest thing to think about is, what do you do when you get out of bed in the morning? Do you always sleep on the same side of the bed? Number one. Do you get up on that same side? Do you put your slippers on? Or are they sitting on your carpet waiting for you to put your slippers on because it's winter? Then you got your robe there, you put that on, you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you do, like, the routines that we've gotten into, like you're talking about, are so ingrained in us that when we step away from that routine, it's very uncomfortable, right? A lot of people will clean their teeth before bed. A lot of people don't. But you become a habit, right?
Exactly.
We were taught as a little kid to have the habit of cleaning our teeth every morning, cleaning your teeth before bed. Not everybody was taught about both of those at that time. But the ones that are do it every day habitually, and they've been doing it for 20, 30, 50, 60, 100 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I totally agree with that. And one thing that I think about today is it seems like more people than ever are starting to challenge, I guess you would say, the status quo of how things always have been.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, the instances that I've recognized as I get a little bit older is we start talking down on the example of like Gen Z, because these guys are coming up in a completely different world than we came up in. They have different opportunities, and they often don't see the same value in going through the same path or the same habitual patterns that generations before them have.
Yeah.
So what is kind of your perspective on, I guess, the mindset of challenging the status quo? And we'll use the example of like education as an example in today's world.
Yeah. Well, I think we should be challenging the status quo. We're moving at such a different pace than we've ever moved at before. I'll just use an example. My son, when he was in his early teens, was all on video games, right? It was all about video games or computer games, all these different ones that he was doing. And I saw some parents sort of not wanting their kids to be anywhere near it. But I watched my son, and I watched how fast he could process and problem solve and be strategic. And for me, his brain was able to move at a speed mine never was, because I wasn't working and playing on games that made me make fast decisions. And I had to be able to react fast. Like, that's how he was training himself. So I'm like, wow, I could see beyond what was on the screen to see how his mind was working and how fast he was able to move in his mindset to make decisions quickly. And so for me, that was a big awakening, because as we're moving forward in the generations that are coming, everyone's getting smarter. Everyone's able to access more information. They're able to process things so much faster. Like myself, trying to figure out how to use all the technology behind the scenes for my podcast is a lot of work for me. But he could go on there and boom, 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 and it would be done in 5 minutes. It will take me 5 days, right? Because I was not trained on that. And so I think it's a beautiful thing that we're moving at a different pace. What I want to be able to see is that we're moving in a beautiful pace that's leading us to more joy, more success in all areas of our life, not just a financial success, not just have a big house success. That's all great, but I want us to be able to have a mental mindset of ease and calm and less mental illness, and being able to have conversations openly about what's affecting and what we can do to be able to change and shift that dynamic, because there is a lot of focus on mindset these days. And I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and I'm appreciating that, because for me it's a big journey for me in learning all the background behind why we have the mindsets that we have and what we can do to affect our futures. And it's never too late. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. You can learn how to manage your mindset so that you can go through your day with ease.
I mean, one of the things that I naturally started thinking about while you were talking there is the intentionality of our mindset. One of the most impactful books that I have read about mindset was actually called Mindset by Carol Dweck from Stanford. And she pioneered the growth idea of a growth mindset. And this is something that I super related with because when I came through the education system, I found myself kind of confined in by a box of you have to perform from F to A on a test. And one thing that I've seen as I get a little bit older is people who are highly successful in this space of education, when they find themselves in real world scenarios, when they're in their professional life or their personal life and they come across hardship and they don't perform at the level that they're used to, they have a really, really tough time adjusting. And so one of the things that I've been trying to really focus on in my entrepreneurial journey is the process of a growth mindset. And it's not about the results that you get, but more importantly, it's the effort that you put into your progression. And that has been a major unlock for me as I've gotten a little bit older.
That's awesome, because really any goal that we set for ourselves, regardless of what it is, if it's just to be able to have a happy home, if it's being able to, get to work and have a good job and make some good income, raise our family, every goal is made to be able to enhance in growth in your development. So every setback helps you get towards growth. Every victory helps you get towards growth, because we're shown these ways of having those setbacks and having these, accomplishments so that we can grow, and understanding that there is no end to our growth, no matter what stage of life you're at. And oftentimes, I'm sure you've heard people in their 90s and 100s saying, they say, what's the biggest learning that or advice you could give somebody? It's just to enjoy every day for what it is.
Yeah.
Right? Just to enjoy. And yet, I look back to what we think might have been a harder life, which is probably a much simpler life. To my parents that were born in the early 1900s and their parents, it might seem to us, because they didn't have the technology, the transportation and everything that we had, but maybe it was simpler in a way. Right? Maybe it was what we're looking for is more of a simplicity in our day-to-day life, but just being able to go, I know it sounds silly, go with the flow, but being able to be aware of my energy in the moment and know that I get to choose where I'm spending my time at that particular point in the day. And if I really feel like I need to just be out in nature and go for a walk, I give myself permission to do those types of things, because that gets me back into the right energy to just have a smooth day. And it's those little things we can do for ourselves that can bring us back on track to where we want to be in our day. And whether you're working in an office, where you get a lunch hour, you get a break, just go outside for 5 minutes. And just get that fresh air, just go smell the flowers, walk down the street, see the trees, say hi to somebody. Do something that gets you into a better energy, so when you walk back in, you're feeling calm. We can release those other things that were bothering us within the building.
And I think that's a big challenge that so many of us face today, especially in this work from home, remote work style now. One of the biggest challenges that I saw so many people have to adjust to in the pandemic was the separation of work and life. I mean, I've always been somebody who's worked from home. So even in the very beginning of my professional career, I had one job before I started my entrepreneurial journey, and it always represented sitting in front of a camera and working from my own workstation.
Yeah.
And so I've had to be very intentional about creating some breaks in work and really recognizing through experience how beneficial those things can be to my overall mindset as well. There's a crazy statistic that said that 69% of employees saw a 25% boost in productivity just by taking a 15-minute break throughout the day and getting outside. And sometimes being able to disconnect with that intentionality of recognizing that I can't just go all day, that I need to kind of create that separation, I think is something that more people start needing to practice, because it has such tremendous impacts on our overall mindset and how productive we are as well.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as just closing the door of your office and just meditating for 10-15 minutes. Put on a YouTube video that has some meditation music and just relax, right? Just relax, get yourself into a good zone, get yourself to where you're feeling good. It might be going to get a fresh glass of water, because water is very good for getting your energy back. And then doing anything that's going to make you feel relaxed. It's going to bring you into a calmer zone, because at work we can get very full of tension, regardless of whether you're working from home, because a lot of people are alone. I was in a women's network group yesterday, and this lady who's typically a very, very high performer, she's been very successful in her career. One of the things she said was like, I am so alone. I'm single and I'm in my home office now. I don't have that network around me, and I need to be around people like you, she was saying to the ladies in the group. And, this is someone that's had very powerful positions, but yet still feels alone because of the working in the home environment, right? And it can get really tiring. Like today, I went out, I thought, you know what, I've got an hour, I'm just going to go out for lunch. I took myself out for lunch, and because I wanted to get out of the house. I needed to get out of the house. I worked from home as well. So it's like, you know what, I'm my own boss. I had a really busy morning. It was fabulous. I had lots of great things happen, but it's like, I just need a break. And so I took myself out for lunch. Like, what does it matter, right? I was around other people. I got to say hi to other people. I got to interact with some people, but I just got to be in a different environment. And that in itself allowed me to come back and say, okay, now I get to go and talk with Keenan and have a great conversation because I'm fresh again, right?
Exactly.
I'm fresh.
I mean, that breaks my heart to hear about that woman's story, but I know it is something that is so familiar to so many of us. You know, in previous conversations, you and I have talked about one of the things that happened during the pandemic was extreme experience of grief and loss from a professional perspective. So losing our sense of community, our sense of, you know, people who we could lean on in our times of just needing to connect from a human perspective. So what are you think, or what are your 2 cents on the sense of community that we need to establish when it comes to our work-life balance and overall longevity of being the highest performer that we possibly can?
Yeah, so I think, you know, for me and what I work with clients on is surrounding yourself with people that are going to uplift you, number one, that are going to, you know, I kind of call them a mastermind group. Find 5 people that you really want to, you know, step up to that next level. So if I'm wanting to be from here and I want to get to there, well, then start surrounding myself with people that are already there, because then I have a real interest in being around people like that. So, you know, whether you might be involved in, let's say some people are involved in their local chamber of commerce or something along that type of line, go and search out the people that, you know, you see are doing really well in the field that you want to be in. Or maybe there's something about what they bring to the table. You're like, wow, I really want to find out this about John. Or I'd love to connect with Sandra because she just is an expert on networking. I can just see how she just shows up and it seems so easy for her. Start being around people and putting yourself in situations where you can be around those types of people so that you are still growing and you're learning, because any entrepreneur or business owner or business person is willing to share their secrets. We just don't ask, right? We just don't ask because of, oh geez, why would they want to talk to me? But they will. And I think the connection piece in the community, we have to actively go after it now, especially since we work from home, most of us that are entrepreneurial now, and still a lot of people are working from home that work for corporations, right? And so when we're looking at that, what type of community can you get involved in, or what could you do to establish a community for yourself amongst like-minded people? So I'm on Zoom all day long, it seems, for a lot of the time, but I also target in certain times of my day for community involvement and to be with community of people that are like-minded that I want to associate with. So I always schedule those into my week as well. And then I actually went and started, I moved to a different city. I've lived here before, but we moved back here 2 years ago, and I didn't have those connections anymore, and everybody was still, you know, not coming out of the house. So I started a women's networking group again with a friend and just started building a community. With my friend, let's do this, let's build it. We need to be connected. Let's find the women around here that want to connect. So we purposely went out to develop that to bring other women together. Now that's just an example, but the community can be built, and there's communities already built that you can join. So don't think that community has to just be online. It can be any way that you want it to be. I have lots of international communities I'm involved with now, which is so much fun because you learn about these other countries and what they're up to and the greatness that they've got. But I think community is really important for us to get back in touch with being with humans and being human with humans and being empathetic and understanding and really just being present with them when we're with them.
I think that's so powerful because I watched an influencer at the beginning of 2023 talked about one of the best ways to create value, not only from a personal perspective, but also in your business, is creating that sense of community. And that's something that I've actually been leaning into with a couple of my friends here in Las Vegas. Is a part of this podcast. Normally what we do is we come and we meet in person, right? And we have that interpersonal interaction, which is so fundamental towards building a relationship. But one of the things that I recognized about that interaction was other entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs who I often interact with are looking for that sense of community as well. And so we are starting a community here in Las Vegas where we really would just want to be able to hold each other accountable towards the things that we're trying to accomplish in life. And that's been a huge dynamic shift. And I was kind of hesitant to actually think about starting it in the first place until I started asking, would it be valuable for us to create a mastermind group? And all of the responses that I've gotten were, oh my God, absolutely, that would be absolutely amazing. I'm looking for other people like me. But in this world of digital natives, it's very difficult to create that in person. And so that's something that we're really going to be emphasizing as well. So I love the fact of, being able to do that. I think that's so powerful. So Sally, one of the things that I want to kind of take in the direction of this conversation is I've got some topics of discussion that I think are incredibly relevant for people that are in the process of building not only a business, but also a happier life for themselves.
Yes.
So one of the things that I know people are dealing with today, especially in this world of digital transformation, is the emphasis of struggling with self-doubt. It's like in this world of social media, everybody has it figured out. And everybody's so much farther ahead of us. And often that sense of self-doubt is something that stops us from getting started in the first place. So what are your perspectives on self-doubt, and where did those things kind of come from?
So I think it's a twofold, where did it come from, in my opinion? Because I think because of the digital network that we're creating, where we are isolated, I'll call it isolated because we are, when we're by ourselves, we're isolated. That causes us to not have anybody to bounce ideas off of, not anybody that you can go to that, because I've always had really close relationships with whoever I was working with at the top leadership role. And I would go in there every day and just say, hey, what about this idea? And bounce ideas off of each other, which would get me motivated, get that other person excited about it and say, yeah, what if we did this? What if we did that? Boom, off we'd go and we'd be energized, right? Now you come to your own home office and you're like, hey, Sally, what are we doing today? Well, I think we'll do this. So you have to keep yourself motivated, and it's very difficult because sometimes you can look at your calendar or you can look at what's ahead of you and you're like, this seems so hard. This seems so challenging. And I see all these people supposedly doing and having these amazing big businesses, and they've got, they're the influencers and things like that. But are they happy?
Right.
We don't know. We don't know how long their journey has been. Maybe they've been doing this for 10 or 15, 20 years, and we're only in our second year. So we get into that comparitis when really we should just be looking at our own journey and say, what do I need to do today to be able to create my life the way I want it to be? If I was to sit down at the end of the day, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel accomplished? Do I want to feel stressed? Do I want to feel like I'm not getting anywhere? Do I want to feel like I have to look for a job or leave my corporate career? Like, what is it? Because we start doubting ourselves when we isolate ourselves, because our minds will take over. Flip back to those paradigms when I was a child saying, is this going to work? Am I worthy? Look at this person. I'll never be like them. They make it look so easy, right? And we know there's nothing that's easy in life. It can be smooth, but it's not necessarily easy because we have a learning curve. And so when you look at that, I want you to think about, what is it that's causing that self-doubt? It's just you telling yourself a thought that is untrue. So why don't you tell your mind a thought that's untrue, that's a good thought? Because when we put the self-doubt in, it's like, I'm not good enough, I'll never make it, what's going to happen if, etc. So we put all those types of negative thoughts in, but what if we said, what is possible? What is going to be the idea that comes to me today that's going to change my future? How much money can I attract in my business today? Because it's going to be so much fun to serve somebody else in this capacity. So when you start to change that those words, you're just telling yourself a different lie. You've told yourself forever that you weren't good enough. And you continue to set, when you get in that self-doubt, you continue to tell yourself that. But if we reprogram it, say, hey, I caught that. No, I'm not going to doubt myself today. That's the first step, is catching yourself with the negativity that you don't want to be telling yourself, that negative chatter. Flip it over to what you want it to be. And have a couple of things written down or put on your board in front of you that have a couple of triggers for the ones that you normally get, and start saying it to yourself, but with energy of achieving, energy of excitement, energy of feeling that you're worthy. Because a lot of self-doubt comes from us not feeling worthy. So we want to be able to reprogram those few thoughts. So every time you hear yourself saying that, you're like, no, that's not me. I am worthy. I am having success. I'm not like Susan, but I am me, and I have a unique ability to help others.
And I think that's so powerful because I heard Gary Vaynerchuk talking about this one time. He talked about that internal voice and those self-doubts that we have, right? And often that becomes a cyclical cycle that we get into, which is telling ourselves we're not good enough. And that internal voice and this narrative that we tell ourselves is incredibly important. But my question is, how many 6-month or 2-year-olds do you know who have that internal negative narrative that they tell themselves? Often not many, if any. I don't think that that's a natural kind of thing that we experience in life. And so going back to the beginning of our conversation today, when we were talking about some of those imposed worldviews, I want people to recognize that you naturally would never doubt yourself. You've had experiences that have kind of forced this worldview upon you that you're not good enough. And that internal voice has been implanted by somebody else. And it's really a matter of kind of working through the process to recognize whose voice am I hearing inside my head? Because that's not a natural story that we would tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when I find myself in those moments of doubt, I often try and create that sense of awareness to call action or attention to the fact that I would never really say this to myself. So let me tell myself, like you said, another lie that I know can give me the boost and motivation that I need to kind of get through this tough time.
Yeah, because it is, we were telling ourselves lies every time we talk to ourselves badly. So I don't have enough money, I'm broke, I'll never be able to buy a house, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'll never find a mate. All of those types of things we tell ourselves over and over again. And a lot of the times it's when we go to bed, we put our head on the pillow, we start reviewing all the things that didn't go right. What if you changed that and said, what's the one thing I did amazingly today? And maybe it was just that you took yourself out for that 5-minute break. That's all that you need to replace it with, is one thing to be able to get yourself thinking down the right path. And so when you wake up in the morning, you go to bed at night, that's when a lot of your thoughts start to just run, because you're shutting down your mind, and your mind starts to feed all these stories to you, right? So think about that and say, if I recognize that I have this thought, that's the first step. I'm self-deprecating. I'm telling myself I'm not good enough. I am good enough. What am I good enough at? I'm good enough because I'm always on time for work.
And that's how we start to build kind of like that momentum, right?
Yes.
One of the things that I've been focusing on recently is kind of building the evidence that I am the person who I say I am. And often it comes in those small moments, right? Because when we talk to ourselves negatively, I don't think people truly understand the true impact of shutting down possibilities for our brain to be creative and to think about things. I was watching Steve Harvey the other day on Instagram, and he was talking to his audience before one of his shows, and he was like, do you want to be successful? Let me tell you the secret. It is the stories that we tell ourselves. If you tell yourself that you're never going to find a good partner, the odds are you're never going to. If you tell yourself you're never going to have enough money, the odds are you're never going to. If you tell yourself you're going to be successful, there's a high probability. If you tell yourself that you're going to have the life that you've always wanted, there's a high probability. But breaking it down to that first principle about the narratives that we tell ourselves are just so powerful. And I really wish people could understand that, because when we wake up in the morning, if we go through that same narrative of telling ourselves today's going to be a terrible day, I don't want to go to work, no wonder you're going to have a horrible experience throughout your life experience, because you're the person who is narrating your own journey. And it's really tough to overcome that narration.
Yeah. And it's, one of the easy ones that I use is when we're driving to work in the morning. And we're like, oh my gosh, look at this traffic. It just sucks. I'm going to be late for work. And we start already getting into that. And then somebody cuts us off and we get mad at that person and all of these things. And what if you just said, I just get to relax and enjoy the music in my car. I'll get there. And I'll get there smoothly and I'll get there on time. But I'm just going to enjoy these tunes. These are my favorite tunes. Boom, on they go. And you just relax into it instead of worrying about all of this other negativity that you're already bringing as you start your day into the workplace. So it's simple little things like that. They seem so simple, but they're very difficult for people to exercise to do that, right? And so that's, I think, where we have to start reprogramming ourselves and telling ourselves new lies, because sometimes people, oh, that's nonsense because you're telling yourself that you're wealthy or you're sexy or you're going to have this man or you're going to have this woman, and it's not true. Well, it won't be true if you keep believing that they're not there, if you keep believing that you'll never deserve that, if you keep believing that that will never show for you. So tell yourself a new lie, make it a good one, right? Make it a good one. I get to travel the world. One of the ones I've used, I did from when I first came out of university, I said, I get to travel all over the world on other person's dime, and another person's dime. I didn't know where I was going to go. I ended up in my first career traveling to Europe, all different countries, and I went all through all different places in the U.S. I was going to New York 2 or 3 times a year. I was going to places in Canada, down in L.A., and all this kind of stuff, places I'd never been before. San Diego, all in somebody else's dime. And then other jobs that I've had, same thing. All of my jobs have provided me opportunities to travel and go to 5-star resorts and everything, and be treated like a queen, because I just put a mantra out there when I started my career. I get to travel the world in someone else's time.
So powerful. And now if you think about this digital world that we live in, you literally jump around the world. You're in Las Vegas with me today, right? Traveling the world on somebody else's dime, which is pretty amazing. That's so powerful.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just whatever you believe can happen. And I don't say it to myself all the time. I've just always believed it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. The next topic that I want to talk about is imposter syndrome.
Ooh, okay.
So this is a big one because once again, this kind of ties into our, struggles with self-doubt.
Yeah.
Often we feel like we're not good enough or we're not as professional as we should be. And that stops so many people from getting started. So why don't you kind of break down imposter syndrome for us and kind of some of the elements of that?
Yes, honestly, I believe imposter syndrome is partly because of it's obviously our belief in ourselves, right? It's what we believe about ourselves, and again, it goes back to comparing ourselves against the others. So there's a lot of people, as you know, that work with people on mindset. I'm one of them, right? I'm one of them. I'm not going to be like the Bob Proctors of the world, because he was doing that business for over 60 years. I've been doing that throughout my career, but I probably won't be showing up the same way that Bob Proctor did. Okay, so I'm not going to show up as Bob. I studied Bob's material. I love Bob. I think he's fabulous, but it's not how I'm going to show up, because I'm going to put Sally's spin on it. And Sally's spin is who I truly am, to be able to put that on there. So when you're thinking about imposter syndrome, people think because they're not as educated, they're not as, deep into that work that as the other person is, that we're lesser than. No. It's our belief in ourselves, and a lot of it comes down to how we see ourselves. I call that our internal self-image. So some people will show up and their hair's done, their clothes are done, they're just like in the trendiest things, and they look fabulous, and they have all the look of everything. But are they just showing up as that person in that look, and do they have the substance? Do you have one thing that makes you unique in what you do that people relate to? Because imposter syndrome is us not believing that we are who we choose to be. And one thing I know about mindset is if you become the star in your show as opposed to the supporting actor, you will start to show up like that star. And that imposter syndrome will disappear, because you believe that you have the ability to touch, even if it's one person, to help them in their lives. Because once you've helped one, then it's easy to help two. Then it's easy to help 3, and then it will start to multiply, because people will see something in you that resonates with them. And if there was only going to be one podcast host in the world, would it be Keenan? Right? Would it be Keenan? Would he be the top one? All the names that you've mentioned, they've worked their whole career to get to where they are, so that they can, be a voice to other people that can help us to be able to be where we are. But don't believe that people aren't looking at you, that people aren't watching you. Because people can relate to people that they resonate with. And your story has something to tell, you have something to tell, and it's your belief in you that stops you from having that imposter syndrome. Because whatever you believe about yourself, you create. Right?
Oh,
you
man.
create that.
I think my most recent podcast guest was a guy named Dorian, and he is a coach, a fitness coach, a personal trainer here in Las Vegas. And one of the things that he actually believes in more so than anything is that your unique value is what you bring to the marketplace. And he used the example of one of his favorite inspirational speakers, and this guy named Eric Thomas. Now, Eric Thomas, if you know anything about him, inspirational speaker, black guy who shows up all the time with a fitted hat on, and he shows up and he speaks these words of motivation to everybody. And somebody asked Eric, why aren't you like the other people, like Tony Robbins or all these other inspirational, motivational speakers? And he said very succinctly that Tony doesn't have the ability to meet everybody where they need to be met. I am going to relate with certain people. They're going to connect with me naturally. And that experience of that connection, because I am who I am, is something that I think more people need to lean into. And that's a huge element that I see so many people dealing with on social media today. We all want to be like someone else. There's a lot of copycat individuals out here. But unfortunately, from my perspective, there's so much opportunity left on the table because people want to be like somebody else. But the real thing is, in this world of copy and paste, we don't need more of what's already out here. So being able to show up as your authentic self is so important. And when you talk about showing up as the lead role in your story, we're not talking about arrogance here, but we're talking about what I would consider that quiet confidence, which helps you show up as your individual self. And quite frankly, if people don't connect with you, that's okay, because there's 7+ billion people in the world today who relate with your story. And I think more people need to kind of lean into that as well.
Yeah, and I think part of, being the star in your own movie is allowing you to say, there's something that I like about how this person is, a characteristic about them. I wonder if I could develop that, because all of us have developed throughout our lives and morphed from, probably every decade we sort of morph in a way that, is either maturity or confidence or understanding, and maybe we just have become better at certain skill sets. But is there something about other people that you've watched and you'd admired and said, hey, I really love how that person does this. And I wonder if I could develop that skill set or that mindset or that, that regimen into my routine. Because then you're starting to say, if I was to really be who I want to be, and I want to be able to be it's one piece of this person. Like I want to be able to be structured like them in their morning routine. Like maybe the trainer has a great morning routine and you want to be able to adapt that. What do I have to tell myself to be able to adapt that and then know that I can continue to have that? Because a lot of the things that we do in life, we try, we stop. We'll try something else, we stop. We try something else, we stop. And therefore we don't get forward because we give up before we actually master that skill set. And a big piece of that for me was my morning routine, to craft my morning routine so that I knew, I do things for myself first. I always do mindset in the morning. I do mindset study club in the morning. It gets me in the role of actually studying my business, understanding more about my business, all those distinctions, and I feel more empowered as my day starts because I've got a strong morning routine. And others will say, okay, well, I'm going to do this and that at this time. Whatever it is, adapt things that are going to work for you, that are going to make you more successful. I found that I wasn't ever reading a book all the way through. And I said, well, why is that I start a book and never finish it? Because I get into them, I'm like, yeah, I really like this, and then I stop. I said, well, what if I just change it to reading 5 pages a day? I can do that. And I'm getting through books because I set a different expectation for myself to educate myself on what I was interested in. So it's those little things that we can do to help us to be able to get on track to where we want to be by adopting and massaging the different things that we could do in our life to get us to where we want to be. But people that work with me come to me because they resonate with me, right? They resonate with me as a human, as where I am in my life, what I'm doing and what I've done, and the way that I come across. Because I'm not one of the loud, yeah, come on and work with me, you gotta do this. I'm not that. I'm a calm person and I'm a joyful person, and I like to come across in a manner that is authentic to me because that's what makes me unique.
Oh, that's so powerful. It's so powerful. As you were talking there, especially about your morning routine, like there are so many examples on the YouTube space as an example of like what the CEO or the $100 million or the $1 million entrepreneur does in his morning routine. And I feel like so many people find themselves falling trapped to believing that that person's routine has to be your routine.
Yeah.
And if you don't execute on that appropriately, then you're going to find yourself in a place of disappointment. Maybe you're not as valuable or you're not as successful as they are. But one of the things that I learned from Tony Robbins was the idea of modeling. So
Yes.
modeling in itself is not copying and pasting into your life, but changing and trying different things in an
Mhm.
attempt to model what somebody else is doing, but putting your own spin on it as well, which I think is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole piece of it, right? That I'm an early morning person. I was raised on a farm and we were always up really early in the morning. So I'm awake at like 4:30 every day. Right? So for me to be in a 6 a.m. club is not a big deal because I'm
Right.
awake. And so I will usually stay in bed and I'll put on my headset and I'll listen to a meditation and I'll go into meditation when I wake up. And then I'll get up around anywhere between 5 and 5:30, typically around 5ish. My husband gets up shortly after and because he's got to go to work early in the morning. And so it works for me. But so many people would say, my gosh, I would never get up at that time of the day. Are you crazy? That's me. So if yours is to get up at 7 or 7:30, give yourself maybe a half an hour earlier in your day than what you normally did and just try to make it a habit. Just don't commit to having to do anything in that first half hour. Say, I'm just going to try and see if I can get up at 7 instead of 7:30. Because if I can get up at 7 and I'm not feeling tired the rest of the day and I can actually do something that just allows me to sit and be calm, then start there. But if you think that the morning is a time that you just want to have to yourself some quiet time, then do it. I used to go running at 5 a.m. in the morning when my baby was little because that was my time. That was my time and it was quiet and it was just like, it's like I had the whole town to myself as I was running and enjoying the weather and enjoying what was going on, but I didn't have to worry about my son because he was still in bed. I didn't have to worry about my husband because he was still in bed and I could just go and do what I wanted to do. And that was part of my morning routine when he was little. So all of those things can add up over time for you to just say what's important to you and where do you want to spend your time and how are you getting your self-care in?
I
Because to
think
me, that's self-care.
I think one of the things that you mentioned there that I think we should spend a couple times or a couple seconds riffing on is the building of habits.
Mm.
So, one of the things that people think about from a habits perspective is behavioral change and how difficult that is for so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that people think about from the ability for them to build happier habits that actually kind of stick around is leaning on the wrong elements, I would say. A lot of people say it's consistency. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people say it's determination. But there's something that supersedes both of those things, and that is identity. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I learned specifically from Atomic Habits by James Clear was talking about one of the most effective ways to instill habits in your life is to change your identity. And then identifying as that person who is
Mm-hmm.
a early morning individual, then we start backlogging or aligning our behaviors and our actions to align with that identity. And that, when we do those things, makes everything so much easier than rather leaning on motivation or
Mm-hmm.
determination or consistency to be able to build better habits. So I
Yeah.
would love kind of your perspective on identity and how
Yeah.
that kind of plays into our habits as well.
Yeah. So I think, the identity I also combine with desire and decision.
Mm,
Because if you have something, let's say you're 30 pounds overweight and you're tired of you've tried all the diets, they're not working, and you're just tired of being that way, and you're like, I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I want to get this weight under control. But if you actually set the intention for yourself that I am a healthy, fit, whatever size you want to be, I usually use women's size clothes because that's easier for them as opposed to weight, and just say, I'm a healthy, fit size 8, and I am just loving how I feel today. And I'm active and I'm eating so healthy. I only put good food into my body and I just feel amazing. So you just reprogram that identity and give yourself those affirmations and just say that you're already there. Because when you make a decision, what I've found is that when people make a quick decision, people that are quick to make decisions will stick to their decision. If you waffle on your decision, you're going to go off of it. And part of that in the identity is to make that decision. Am I worth being in the best shape of my life as I'm aging? Am I worth being the CEO of my business? And how can I create that? Because it just feels amazing when I think about it. And so when we talk about our identity, think about the elements. Like, am I the best dad? Like, I want all my kids to say, Dad, you're the best. And to give me these big hugs every day because I'm just present with them all the time. I'm present with them. That's sometimes all it takes, right? Is being present. So think about your identity and say, what is it that I can do to reprogram those thoughts again, because it's really our thoughts, to say, this is how I would like to be. But don't say it as if I want it or if I need it, but I am.
I mean, it's so powerful because there are so many elements of life that starts. One of my favorite sayings is when we are on the right path, the universe starts to conspire with us.
Yes,
And naturally, that starts to put yourself in the position of recognizing that I am this person. One of my key journeys in life was when I moved to Las Vegas in 2012, I was like 60 pounds overweight. And one of my friends said, hey, this year, let's go to the gym every single day. And I said, I'm in for this. And eventually I started telling myself that I am somebody who goes to the gym consistently. And what that turned into was me building the habit of showing up day after day after day after day in the gym. And before I knew it, I became that fit person because I was able to build the habit that was sustainable because it aligned with my identity. And it's crazy to think about how something so small can have such a huge impact on my life and my health in general. And it's been a game changer for me. And I really think about why I haven't deployed that more so in my life, because I have that hard proof in front of me that proved that that type of thing, like losing so much weight and going to the gym, was something that became such a part of my life because I identified with that person and who I wanted to become.
Yeah, and I bet you your diet changed. And
All of it.
Your outside activities changed, and how you the things that you chose to do changed along with it, because as you take on the new identity of that fit person, not only does the weight fall away, which is a huge bonus, but everything else changes, because you're like, no, I don't eat sweets. No, I don't eat chips or burgers. I get this most exotic, rice bowl or something like this that you would really love, and say, oh my gosh, and it was just so tasty because it was all fresh ingredients and one ingredient foods, and it was just the combination that they made was so amazing, and I can't wait to have another meal like that. You start telling yourself a different story and say, no, I don't eat that. I don't have chocolate. I don't have ice creams. I don't need that. I fuel my body for success. And you start telling yourself those types of lies at the beginning. Those are more powerful than any diet you could go on. Those are more powerful than any change that you could make with other things that you're doing in your life that are, saying, oh yeah, I'm going to go do it. Going to isn't a commitment, is it? It's not a commitment. We say, I'm going to, or I want to. It's like, no, this is part of my lifestyle. And I go to the gym every day. I get to go to the gym every day. I like that. I get to.
I know. Let's talk about that really quick, because that was one that when we first met, that was a golden nugget that you dropped. And I would love for you to kind of let the audience in on that small hack, because it is so powerful.
Yeah, so this is something that I discovered having worked for years and years and years. I always had a to-do list, and my to-do list could be like a page long when I was at the office, or even coming into this business. And studying mindset more allowed me to realize that a to-do is a command. And nobody likes to be told what to do they?
No.
Nobody likes to be commanded to do something. So I changed it to in my notebook that I keep, because I'm still old-fashioned. Today I get to be on Keenan's podcast and show up with the most beautiful energy and have so much fun. I always say what I want to be able to create with it, not just that I get to do it, but I get to is so much more powerful, because that's a choice I'm making as opposed to a command I'm giving. So if I give myself that choice of showing up in a certain way for whatever I've got on my calendar, it feels so amazing. And I write it down every day just like that. Today I get to da-da-da-da, and then whatever energy I want to have come forward for it. And that to me has been a game changer, because now it makes my day all about my choice, not about a command. And a command feels so heavy to me. It may not feel like that to you, but a command feels heavy and negative energy. And today I get to allows me to be able to open up to the freedom and the fun of the day and just enjoy what I get to do in my day.
I mean, and at the end of the day, the fact that we have the opportunity to hop on this call today and hop on and collaborate about this topic of mindset is truly a blessing. I mean, with all of the hardship that's going on across the world, like we see the fires right before, this week before we recorded this episode in Hawaii, so many people are displaced from their homes, and so many people don't have the luxuries that we do. And so when we think about the perspective and mindset that comes along with saying, I have to go to work today, I have to go to the gym, you really think about what your rank is in all the 7.9 plus billion people across the world, everybody in the United States, everybody in North America, everybody who wakes up in a warm bed that has air conditioning and internet and water to drink, we rank pretty high on that list. And so that's always been a huge reframe for me, and trying to kind of think about the perspective of I get to do these things. It is such a blessing when we put ourselves in that grounded sense of gratitude.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can't at this point even afford a gym, say I get to go for a run every day, or I get to get outside and play in the park with my kids, or I get to, find a way to make it work within what you can afford too, because there's lots of ways to afford. You can go to a library and get all the books that we've been talking about if you don't have access to the internet, right? Some people can't afford that these days, and that's okay. There's other options out there. So if we think about all the things that we get to do, how would you feel if you go into work instead of saying, oh, I have to go to work today, versus I get to go to work today? I have the privilege of having that opportunity to go and earn some money, be around other people, create something with that organization or company, give them some value, because whatever I bring to the table brings them value, and at the end of the day, it puts the food on the table for my family. So I get to do that. I don't have to go to work. You can have a choice. Leave your work. What are you going to do then?
Seriously, exactly. I mean, that's a great question. And we do have that choice. I think so many people find themselves in that state of, I don't want to call it victimhood, but that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
We act like so much of our life is outside of our control, and we don't have the ability to make choices. But that sense of agency that we all have in being able to make tough decisions, to change our career, to do things that we're passionate about, is something that we all have the ability to do. But it's also having the confidence and the quiet confidence in ourselves that we're going to be successful, even if we make those types of choices as well.
Yeah, and everybody's definition of success is different, right? Everybody's definition of success is different. So it's going back to that imposter syndrome or compare-itis. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Do what's important for you and only for you, because all you can control is you.
That's right.
You can't control anybody else, can't control the circumstances, but you can control your responses to everything in your life, and you can control what you choose to do. And I think that's a big part of what we're losing these days too, is we're losing the fact that we think we have choice when we do have choice.
That's right.
Everything we do.
Absolutely. I heard a quote one time, and it said, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% what we do and how we react to those situations.
Yes.
And even today, I was supposed to have a live stream, and unfortunately it went down. We didn't have the ability to do it. And I thought to myself, I could be super down and upset about it not going as I planned, but more importantly, I can choose to make today a great day. And now I'm here having this conversation with you, and it's been a great turn of events, but I knew that my day was going to end well because I was going to be having this conversation with you, Sally.
Yeah.
And I just want to say
Likewise.
thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you've given us so many nuggets of wisdom today, and we have so much more that we could talk about. But I want to give you the last couple seconds here to bring up any type of topic or share how people can get in contact with you, anything that you're passionate about right now. The last couple seconds is completely you.
Okay, so I guess the one thing I'm most passionate about is just letting people know that there's an opportunity for them to change today, to make a choice today on how they choose to create their life. Because life is about creation, it's about growth, it's about choice. And I see so many people, like you were saying earlier, Keenan, about, in that imposter syndrome, in that self-doubt, in that fear, in that worry. And honestly, at the end of the day, we don't have to take all of that on. We can just choose to be in our place of joy and peace and happiness and abundance wherever we are. And it doesn't matter whether you're living in a mansion or you're living in a rented apartment. It doesn't matter if you're living in mom's basement. You can still choose to be happy and joyful and confident in who you are and who you're becoming. Because life is a journey and we're all in growth. Every day we're growing. And if we're not growing, what's happening? We're dying. So we need to be able to be in that place of growth. And I always hear people, as I'm getting older and other people around me are getting older, oh, I don't want to celebrate my birthday because I'm getting so old. And I'm like, aren't you lucky?
Right.
You got to wake up today and celebrate this birthday. How many people didn't make it to this age? And so it's all in our perception, thinking that an age is a number that's going to stop us, when an age is a number that can only propel us forward if we choose that. So I guess that's part of what I want to say is don't give up on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, because there are ways to be able to simply make some adjustments, make some changes. I'm not going to say they happen overnight, because we've been trained in a certain way for a long time, so it takes that recognition, it takes reprogramming a number of times before you can start to re-believe things, but anything is possible. Anybody can be successful. Anybody can create their dreams, and you can create them as big as you choose. Because when you make the decision to create those big dreams, just like you said, the universe conspires, and every people, places, and opportunities will show up when you're in that right vibration and when you truly believe that you can create your future. So that's what I would like to leave people with, because I've seen it over and over again, and I've experienced it myself, and I want others to be able to have it as well. And so the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn, just under my name, Sally Arkell-Boles. That's how I go in there. I have a company named Dynamic Intentions, but most of my work is done through my personal profile. You can also find me on my website, samename.com. And you can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook, same name. I just use my personal name for all of that. And then I also have a podcast as well. That is Sally Speaks Mindset. So that one is active in YouTube and Spotify, and will be up in Apple soon. So it's exciting for me to be able to connect with people. I do have some launches that I'm doing this fall. Just finishing up with one group of people that have just been incredible to work with, and wanting to just serve some more people as we're going into the fall-winter season, because I know that time of the year can become, as the nights get darker, everybody gets back into the routine, kids are back at school, and that kind of thing is when a lot of tension starts to show back up in our lives. So if you're needing mindset tips, mindset ideas, just connect with me, go into the DMs, let me know who you are and where you heard about it, and I'll definitely help you with what I can.
Well, thank you so much, Sally. I know you've given so much wisdom today, and I do encourage everybody to go find Sally on LinkedIn, as well as listen to her podcast as well. She's putting out consistent value for everybody as well. So, Sally, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, guys. That's been another episode of the Hart Hustle Podcast. We will catch you in the next one. Take it easy.